just want to make a brief statement. So for those folks who are on, before we go to question and answer, the department has made a deliberate attempt to provide you as much information ahead of time in order to be in the best position to compete for grants and programs here at the Department of Education. So the goal of today's webinar was to let you know about the upcoming grant competition, to plant that seed in your mind about what it's going to take in order for you to be an effective applicant, and also provide all the relevant information that we have to date. As Pearson mentioned, a lot of this information will be announced in the Federal Register, which we are still determining exactly when that will be. But as far as general timeline, I will briefly scroll back and have that up on there so folks understand what the timeline looks like moving forward. And to let folks know as well is that the White House Initiative on Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders is aiming to provide a series of webinars for all of you. So this one was laying out the general parameters, laying out the timeline. The next webinar we hope to host in November, which will focus on highlighting two existing funded AANAPISis, what they did to be a part of the cohort that received funding from the department and what they actually did with their funding. So hopefully it puts all of the schools in a position to better understand how to frame their application and what they can do with these funds. And that'll take place again in November. Early next year in January, February, we will have another webinar that will focus on the actual application, the Part A application itself. And as Pearson mentioned, schools will be allowed 60 days after that, after a Federal Register notice, to apply. So we wanted to lay all of that out in context, and we obviously want to hear from you. So operator, I think if we can provide instructions on question and answer, we'd like to take some questions and inquiries from the community now.
Yes, sir. Thank you. We will now begin with a question and answer session. If you would like to ask a question, you may press star and then 1. Please unmute your phone and record your name clearly when prompted. Your name is required to introduce your question, and to withdraw your request, you may press star and then 2. One moment, please, for the first question.
Let me go ahead and jump in then and ask the first question. Pearson, I know often when we meet with the community and we meet with AANAPISI eligible schools, they ask a lot about the Part A and Part F and can I apply, can I not apply?
Okay.
To let folks know, there are approximately 150 to 160 institutions that are potentially eligible for this program. So we're talking about a small number of schools. So I think there's a great chance and opportunity for you to be competitive. Out of that total number, certain schools will not meet eligibility. Certain schools have already received Part A funding and will not be able to apply again. And the last group of individual schools who will not be able to apply are seeking funding under a different Part A application. So your chances, again, seem pretty good. So you should be looking at the program. But Pearson, can you talk a little bit about that Part A and Part F, please?
Let's be clear. If an institution already has an AANAPISI Part A, you can apply again. There's no wait-out period as in regards to like the SIP program have a 2-year wait-out period. So any institution that currently have a AANAPISI Part A but does not have a Title V grant or any other Title Part A grants can apply for the AANAPISI Part A. So as I was saying during the webinar, that if an institution has a Title V Hispanic Serving Grant, they cannot apply for the AANAPISI Part A grant. Or if a school has the Alaska Native Hawaiian grant Part A, they cannot apply for the AANAPISI grant. Or if an institution has a SIP Part A grant, they cannot apply for the AANAPISI Part A grant.
Thanks, Pearson. That was very helpful. Thanks for that. Do we have any other questions, operator?
Yes, sir. We have questions in queue. Our first question comes from the line of Mr. Brian Corner. Sir, your line is now open.
Actually, I think it was probably answered because we already have an HSI grant, but is there any discussion about allowing people to be both a Hispanic serving institution and qualify for AANAPISI?
Currently, how the legislation is written is clearly states that an institution cannot have both. In regards to changing that, it would have to be changed. The legislation would have to change in regards to that clause prohibiting institutions from having a AANAPISI and a HSI grant. Now, we do have the Part F grants, but that competition won't be in 2016, and the institutions can have a AANAPISI, any Part F grants with a Part A grant. So your institution has a HSI grant. Your institution could apply for the AANAPISI Part F grant because they don't have any regulations in regards to institutions having both grants at the same time. It's just the Part A. It's just the Part A grants.
Thank you.
Next question.
Yes, sir. Our next question comes from the line of Ms. Laura Carella. Ma'am, your line is now open.
Hi there, thank you. We had a question. Would you be able to spend more time discussing the steps to receive the designation?
Okay. You will have to apply for the designation of eligibility, and as we're saying in the webinar, it will not open up until we think the end of this month or beginning of November. And you have to meet the qualifications under that are outlined in the webinar. But if your institution, for some reasons, do not meet the guidelines, can apply for waivers and still be in order to become eligible.
Now, do all colleges receive that designation by meeting those criteria, or do some and not others?
Well, if you meet the criteria, you will be designated eligible. But if you do not meet the criteria, then you will need to apply for a waiver if you would like to be eligible to apply for grant funds. And there will be a webinar just on the eligibility process itself.
Oh, fantastic. How long does that process generally take?
It's a 45-day window.
Okay.
From the date it's announced in the Federal Register to get your application in for to be deemed eligible.
Okay, thank you. So it sounds like in October, information about the eligibility will come out. We'll have 45 days to do that, and then by January, February, we can have more information on the grant application itself.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Our next question comes from the line of Ms. Deborah Rosen. Ma'am, your line is now open.
Yes, thank you. I wondered if you could explain what the prohibitions are against serving other than Asian Pacific students. Must all the students meet that designation?
Okay, in order to apply for the grant, institution has to have at least 10% Asian American Pacific Islander students in their student population. But these are federal grants, so you're not designated just serving Asian American Pacific Islander students, also low income students, or any students that can benefit from the services that you will be applying. The services you will be given to students. I know there's an institution in South Seattle. Several of their students, they're currently at AANAPISI, have an AANAPISI grant, and in their program, they don't only serve Asian and Pacific Islanders, they also serve the other minority groups at the institutions, or any student who can benefit from the services they're offering from the grant. So you're not limited, and you can't discriminate for any students who would like to participate in any services you're providing with federal funds.
So when we're designing our program, it can be designed to serve any low-income student?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Our next question comes from the line of Ms. Grace Lee. Ma'am, your line is now open.
Yes, hello. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. I'm sorry. I'm sorry if I missed this, but you had spoken about the waiver. So, will the the steps to apply for the waiver be included in the Federal Register in October, November?
Yes.
As
yes.
well?
And yes, and also the webinar on eligibility will discuss the waivers in detail in regards to the waivers.
Oh, okay. So this is the webinar in October, right?
Yes. Well, yes. Yes, I think it's going to be scheduled sometime October, November. As soon as they hit the Federal Register, the webinars will be coincide with it.
Okay, great. And the other question I also had was, we had received the AANAPISI grant in the previous round. What is the likelihood that past recipients would be, past grantees would be able to receive it again, or is there just a blank slate?
It's a blank slate, so everyone is a blank slate, and you're scored on the application, not based on prior applications or prior grants you may have had.
Great. Okay. Thank you.
Our next question comes from the line of Ms. Lisa Scurry. Ma'am, your line is now open.
Thank you. My question also has to do with the designation of eligibility. And just for clarification, since this is under Title III, there's the waiver application. Mm-hmm. Is that the same thing for eligibility under Title III, or is there a separate eligibility application that needs to be filled out in addition to that?
It would be the waiver. There would be the waiver application attached to eligibility.
Okay, but it's the Title III waiver?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And that's the only then eligibility designation, right? Or the only thing that we need to apply for eligibility?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Our next question comes from the line of Mr. Tim Fong. Sir, your line is now open.
Hi, my question is going back to the dual designation. I wasn't quite clear. It sounded like what Pearson said was if you're a Hispanic serving institution, you cannot apply as an AANAPISI, just not at all, or can you apply as long as no one else from the institution applies for that funding?
Well, I was saying if you have a Hispanic serving grant now, because you can't, you can apply, but you'll be wasting your time, because if you have currently have a grant, we're not going to read that application, because you can't give up one grant for another grant. So if your institution currently have an HSI grant, it can't give up that grant to apply and then accept the AANAPISI grant. Now, if the HSI, if they have a grant competition also next year, and we definitely have a grant competition for the AANAPISI, and your institution qualifies under both because you serve both populations, you can apply for both grants. But if your institution make the funding slate for AANAPISI and HSI, your institution will then have to decide which grant they would like to take, because you can't have both. So that's when you have to make the decision if you can have one or the other.
Okay, I understand.
If you like one or the other.
Right. I understand you don't want to double dip, but again, with the Part A, if institution is HSI, has not applied for anything, or certainly not within Title III, has not had any funding at all yet.
Yes, they can apply. Yes, they can apply.
Okay. Yes.
Because there's institutions in California that qualifies under HSI and AANAPISI. So if you don't have a HSI, currently have an HSI grant, then you're more than welcome to apply for the AANAPISI grant.
Thank you.
Our next question comes from the line of Ms. Gina. Ma'am, your line is now open.
Hi, this is to follow up on what Tim was asking. We are also an HSI institution, and a few years ago, I think we got the grant. So I guess I'm trying to figure out the timeline in which we would be eligible. So as soon as if that HSI grant ends, then we can apply to the Part A?
Yes, and And since you already have an HSI grant currently, you couldn't apply for this AANAPISI Part A grant we have in 2015, but in 2016 we are having the AANAPISI Part F grant, and you can have that grant alongside with your Title V HSI grant Part A.
Okay. And we can find out about this just through our own institution when the other grant will end. The
normally there is 5 years, so I guess you would need to find out exactly when the grant was awarded to your institution.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I just want, this is Akil again from the White House Initiative. Just wanted to flag for folks that on our website we've put together a Google map that identifies eligible AANAPISI institutions that we have on our end. So many of you already know that you're eligible for the program, and that's great. But if you're questioning it, we have some additional information there for you. But again, it is going to be all dependent on whether you meet the requirements that's set out in the Federal Register. But we hope that webpage will be useful for you moving forward. Sorry, operator, we're ready for the next question.
It's okay, sir. Our next question comes again from the line of Miss Grace Lee. Ma'am, your line is now open.
Yes, sorry, thanks again. I guess in terms of, so when we apply for the eligibility after the Federal Register makes an announcement, is that when we would reapply for the AANAPISI status?
Well, I think it's confusing in regards to AANAPISI status.
Okay.
In regards to the department currently, only AANAPISI institutions currently have a grant. When you apply for eligible, you AANAPISI eligible based on having the eligible criteria, having a low education expenditures, having enough for Pell Grant recipients at your institution, low income recipients, then you're eligible. And that eligibility means that you're eligible for any Title III grant application that's available. Then the specific ones based on percentage of students.
Right. Well,
HSI, you have to have 25%, Hispanic serving, and the PZ 10%, Alaska Native 10%, Native Hawaiian, Alaska Native. The ones that based on demographics then looks into your percentage of students that qualify under the specific ones based on demographics.
Okay, and so if we meet that 10%, then we would not have to, for example, apply for AANAPISI status.
Right.
Okay.
You just have to apply for the grant. You just have to apply for the grant. You have to apply for eligibility. Just applying for eligibility just makes you eligible enough. You're eligible to apply for the grant.
Okay, great. And then the other question I had was a colleague had asked me if a university and a community college could submit one application or one grant together.
Well, we're not doing any cooperative arrangement grant.
Okay. Okay.
But I mean, if you have a strong proposal, you can submit that as one individual grant.
Okay. But a community college and a university could submit one together. Essentially,
yes.
You're saying. Okay, great.
Yes.
All right. Thank you.
So I just wanted to, this is Akil again at the White House Initiative. I just wanted to flag for folks the importance of the AANAPISI designation and applying. Just to let folks know, too, is that we receive a lot of inquiries from agencies across the federal government who are giving money in the billions of dollars seeking to support institutions that, schools that are minority-serving institutions. So these are historically black colleges, universities, Hispanic-serving institutions, tribally controlled universities, and also AANAPISIs. So we want to put schools like you in a position to compete and succeed in applying for these grants and opportunities. So this process helps in that endeavor, not only to seek the support from the Department of Ed in a specific program, but to also put yourself in a position with other agencies and departments.
Also, I want to clarify a question. If your institution currently has a Title III Part F HSI STEM grant, you can apply for the AANAPISI Part A grant.
Thank you. Our next question comes from the line of Ms. Ida Quenziuvas. Ma'am, your line is now open.
Thank you. Hi, Pearson.
Hi.
My question is about the Part F competition for 2016. Is there already an expected timeline for that particular competition?
No. Everything would be similar based on the time frame for 2015, but nothing concrete.
Okay. But a similar timeline to follow, kind of what you just expressed for Part A. And just that last remark you had regarding the STEM and the Part A being okay to apply for, what was that STEM?
Yeah, there was also a, besides the AANAPISI Part F, there was also a HSI Title III HSI Part F STEM. So if any institution was awarded that HSI Part 3 F grant, they can apply for the AANAPISI Part A grant if they don't have a if they currently don't have any Title V HSI grant or any Title III grant.
Okay, but no on the F because it would be a Part F as well.
Well, if an institution even if institution just have an AANAPISI Part F grant, they can also apply for the AANAPISI Part A grant. You just cannot have two A's, but you can have an A and an F.
Correct. Okay. Thank you.
Our next question comes from the line of Ms. Paulina Tagle. Ma'am, your line is now open.
Hi, I just posted this. Just to clarify the initial instructions, we have a POHA funded project, which is the Title V Part B. My understanding is we still can apply and get funded if successful under the AANAPISI program. Can you confirm that?
I think you can, but I definitely want to follow up, but I believe you can. But I would follow up. If you can just email me, and I'll follow up with you, but I believe you can. But I don't want to give you a concrete answer right now, but I believe you can.
Okay, thank you so much.
So just follow up with me, and I will let you know.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Our next question comes from the line of Ms. Alicia. Ma'am, your line is now open.
Thank you. Could you please repeat the address to the PowerPoint slides? And I have another question. We serve a large proportion of Filipinos and Pacific Islanders, and so I was wondering if we can still serve Filipino population.
Yes. Yes, you just have to have. As long as your institution have 10%, you can apply for the AANAPISI grant.
Okay, thank you, and I'll look forward to the address of the PowerPoint slides. Thank you.
Yeah, and for the PowerPoint slides, we will pair the audio and the PowerPoint together and send that out to everybody on email, and it'll also be up on YouTube. And then, Pearson, there was a question on chat. Someone asked, can you have two Part Fs?
Currently, no. Because, no.
Thank you. Our next question comes from the line of Ms. May Toy Lucanas. Ma'am, your line is now open. I'm sorry, Ms. May Toy Lucanas, your line is now open.
I think you mean May Toy Lucans. This is May, and I just wanted, JP had mentioned about just maybe clarifying. What I wanted to share with you, here at South Seattle College, we do target our strategies to serve our AAPI population, just because that's what AANAPISI is about. What we have learned is in doing that, we really serve a much larger population of students that haven't been served by the strategies that we target for our AAPI. So half the students that utilize our services are not AAPI, which is the beauty of MSI grants and how we serve everyone. And the other thing I wanted to do was plug that at South, we are hosting in February 6th and 7th an Engaging in Promising Practices conference where we really hope to share, we can all share our promising practices and really engage people to take something back with them that they can implement. And the half-day pre-conference will focus on institutionalizing our practices, since the purpose is to strengthen the institution by that which we are doing, and so we want to talk about how we all are institutionalizing those practices. Thank you.
At this time, there were no questions in queue, sir.
Great. Thank you. Well, thanks everyone for joining us on the call today. And as we mentioned, there's a specific timeline that we're operating on. We will definitely be in touch with all of you to answer questions that still remain on this program. We will send out this video as well so you can watch it again, and hope you'll disseminate to your friends and colleagues. In addition, please look out for additional information on a webinar highlighting 2 existing AANAPISI programs, how they actually succeeded in obtaining the grant, and what they're doing with the funds. That'll be scheduled for some time in November. And the designation of eligibility in that process will occur again in October. Folks will have 45 days, and the Part A application will be in January, February, and will allow folks about 60 days to apply. If you have any additional follow-up questions, please feel free to email me at akil.vora@ed.gov. That's akil.vohra@ed.gov. And for questions specific to the AANAPISI program, you can email Pearson Owens at Pearson, PEARSON.OWENS @ed.gov. Thanks a lot for joining us on our call. We'll hope to talk to all of you soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
That